Hello viewers, welcome to the show. This is a special edition of Prime Media with me, Mengistu Asafa. There is a conflict in Ethiopia in the northern part of the country that is feared that it will cause a regional destabilization in the Horn of Africa. I have a guest from Nairobi, Kenya, a Kenyan politician and the former Deputy Speaker of the National Parliament of Kenya, Mr. Maዓልም. I will be talking to him about the regional implication of this conflict. And stay with us. I have a special guest today from East Africa, Kenya, a Kenyan politician. He used to be a Kenyan deputy speaker for the National Parliament and twice member of the Parliament, Mr. Maዓልም. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you, sir. So we are going to start by me asking you some of the questions about what's going on in Ethiopia. As a person who is closely following what is happening in Ethiopia, especially the northern parts of Ethiopia, the Tigray armed conflict, how do you see the conflict, sir?
Well, the conflict, in my opinion, is an internal matter, very much. It's a question of federalism taken a little bit too far, because federalism basically means a devolution, economic devolution by and large. The center ordinarily is supposed to be in charge of many things. That includes all the national policies, the military, the foreign affairs, all those things are supposed to be done by the center. And that goes to all democracies that we know of. You know, this is not a confederation. This is not a union like the EU, the European Union, or any other bloc. This is a country. It's a one country. And for the TPLF to behave like these two centers of power in Ethiopia itself was, in my opinion, a travesty of the manner in which they have tried to interpret devolution or to interpret federalism. So I think Abiy and his government have been very patient for a very long time. Ordinarily, when this kind of things happen, the center is supposed to come very hard, because center is supposed to have monopoly of foreign relations, monopoly of the what do you call, the means of firepower, which is the military and all the rest. You can have a state police merely for keeping law and order ordinarily in that place. That's why you call them Liu police in your country. But for a state to attack its own military, the military that is supposed to maintain the territorial integrity of the country itself, and to kill its own officers, I think that was the height of lawlessness. And it's understandable, because the TPLF has held Ethiopia as some kind of hostage for a very long time, well over almost 3 decades. So there was too much impunity. I mean, it became part of their life, and they got so used to it. You see, they say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So they because of the manner in which they practice the power and monopolize the power and monopolize the economic might of that country itself, and became a law unto themselves for almost 3 decades, I think they decided, well, if we're going to miss this opportunity of holding the entire country as some kind of a chattel, then we might as well secede. So that can only be dealt with, and the response has got to be swift, it has to be strong, it has to be powerful, and it cannot be questioned. The only thing the international community and the country itself can do is to support the center in this case.
Good, sir. There are many analysts who call for negotiated settlement to this conflict. So you're suggesting that this operation should end so very soon. And there are also fears that this conflict might drag in some states, some of the East African states, so that it might also destabilize the region. What is your view on that?
No, it is the height of dishonesty. It's the height of both intellectual as well as operational and statecraft dishonesty for somebody to suggest that a state within a bigger nation itself can decide to act unilaterally and go and kill its own officers and armed forces, and then you say, let there be a negotiation between the two. This is not a border between two sovereign states where one of them moved into the other. That way you can say, yes, Let's have a ceasefire. Let's have the two countries, come back into their own senses and see what can be done in terms of resolving the issue. This is an internal matter. The American Civil War, if you remember the history of that, more than anything else was because the states decided not to listen to the center. And that's why Abraham Lincoln decided, whether you can call it an American Civil War, but that's why Abraham Lincoln decided to commit the central government, United States of America, and its military and all those forces to try and bring those states into the fold properly. In Africa, I think that's probably not such a powerful parallel because America was in that time going through the formation. Ethiopia has been a state now for a very long time. The other one which can be compared to that is the one of Biafra. When Biafra tried to secede from Nigeria, and the whole world was there to say, no, it can't work. And basically what happened was what happened. I mean, the central government of Nigeria came very hard on the Biafrans. Of course, there's going to be a hell of a lots of sufferings and loss of life, and a lot of things happen, but it had to be brought back to the fold. The same goes, because if you now allow this to happen with Tigray, what is going to happen to the other states in Ethiopia or the provinces? Or anybody to tell you right now, we decided to secede from Kenya ourselves in 1963. We wanted to join with Somalia. And I'm talking about the province which I come from, which was called the Northern Frontier Districts, where the Cushitic, Hamitic, the Oromos and the Somalis live in. Our government did not go out there to seek a settlement of that issue. No. The military came in hard, all the governments, and that was a newly independent country. We were brought back to the fold. The same happened on a number of occasions in other places. So Ethiopia, being fragile as it is, Ethiopia is basically a state that is trying to find its way into a nationhood, proper nationhood, with appreciation of the diversity that it has. But the diversity is not supposed to weaken the center. The diversity is supposed to make the best out of devolved economic, freedom, and at the same time strengthen the center. So I don't think there will be a civil war. That cannot be called a civil war. I don't think this conflict is going to extend or expand to the neighboring countries. It's the one that was going to cost you go anywhere now. We have been at war with one another for the last 20 odd years. Ethiopia went to war with Eritrea. Ethiopia went to invade Somalia and occupy Somalia. Ethiopia went and did awful things in Sudan. They did awful things in South Sudan. And that is because the TPLF was in power at that time, and the TPLF converted itself to some kind of a hired machinery, powerful strength, which was supposed to be used by I don't know which, but some powerful Western countries to protect its own interests, and they use the gambit diplomacy everywhere. You can't allow that. For the first time, the region is going to see peace. It's going to see economic integration. We are not going to have one cycle of violence after the other, because everybody used to prepare themselves for the next cycle of violence. And Ethiopia was going to disintegrate as a state in the form and shape we have known it for the last almost 200 years, or maybe even much more. So I think what is happening right now is very good. It is a lesson to the rest of the countries in the region. It is a wake-up call to all the countries in the region, and if they don't support Ethiopia this time in establishing the way they're establishing, who knows? Next time there are going to be problems in Kenya. Next time there are going to be problems in Sudan itself, where the East would want to secede, or there's going to be Uganda problems where the North would want to secede. So it's important. There's going to be a problem in Djibouti, where you can have an ethnic or whatever it is. So basically the point we are saying is that let us protect the states the way they are. Let the center be respected. Let them also make an informed, brilliant, acceptable utilization of the federalism that's there. And I don't think TPLF did that. TPLF was careless and crooked and terrible. And basically this is now what is happening to them right now. Everybody will tell you they deserve it.
Thank you, sir. But in one of your tweets, you tweeted that this war is not between Abiy Ahmed and the TPLF. It's neither between Amhara and the Tigray people. It is between TPLF and the Horn of Africa. And you further went that to say that TPLF had taken Djibouti and the Kenyan foreign policy hostage, and IGAD is TPLF too. Can you elaborate on that, sir? What do you mean? What did you?
Well, I'll give you just one example. How many years was Meles the chairman of IGAD? Ordinarily, the chairmanship of IGAD should be changed every 1 year. What happened? Because we talked to our country, our country became hostage. If you remember very well, my own foreign minister here is a very good friend of mine, and the government one time went out there to the UN to claim that Eritrea is supporting Al-Shabaab in Baidoa with the most preposterous, outrageous, unfounded, false accusations. When it came to Somalia, Ethiopia went into Somalia without any resolution, any resolution as such. When Eritrea tried to come back into the fold, Ethiopia used the most crooked, primitive way of telling the IGAD executive secretary that you cannot have them there. So much so that the representative of Eritrea into IGAD was thrown out of the conference. So basically, we had a mafia running that place, and it took charge of, let me tell you, Djibouti's foreign policy, or rather policy toward the TPLF, is common knowledge. Everybody knows that. And Ismail Margele might have run his country in the manner in which he ran it, but the reality of the matter is that the Meles Zenawi was a supremo. He was literally the man who ran the whole region. In our case, also, we felt the same. That's why right now we are confused. We are in a state of confusion in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have changed the minister, former minister, but we still don't know where we are going and where we are coming from, because we allowed an age-old relationship between Haile Selassie and Jomo Kenyatta when Kenya got independence, and of course Ethiopia came back together through that mutual defense pact, which was designed to protect one another against certain ethnic communities, both in Ethiopia and in Somalia, in Kenya and in Somalia. So, but you see, the point of the matter is that times have changed. Times have now changed. You cannot hold Ethiopia in the manner it was before. Ethiopia had a history in which they were the lesser humans, and the more, nobility, the more privilege, the more like, and what the TPLF exercised was clearly to say that we are there. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than the others. So the TPLF was much more equal than all the rest of Ethiopia. And our Kenya government accepted that in principle, and then basically we became hostage for them. And let me tell you one thing, there was never an IGAD. IGAD, in its previous constitution, before our good brother Orkene came in there now, was nothing but a small department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, which was run by Mesfin Sium and all the thugs you remember, including Gebre and God knows who. And sometimes even military generals who are in Somalia or who are in the eastern, in the Somali region of Ethiopia. So there was nothing called IGAD in the sense of the founders or the initiators of that noble idea in the first place. IGAD was completely taken over by Ethiopia, and Djibouti could not do anything. Well, I can understand. It depends on Ethiopia for a lot of its business, undoubtedly yes. But there again, when it came to foreign policy towards Somalia, foreign policy towards the region, foreign policy towards Eritrea and everybody else, well, you could say that Djibouti and Kenya did not have a foreign policy that was independent from what Meles or the TPLF wanted. And Mesfin Sium, for how many years? How many years was Mesfin Sium the Minister for Foreign Affairs for Ethiopia?
Almost more.
You tell me. And he comes from a community of less than 4 point something or 3 point something million out of a country of 110 million. And there were always certain areas that were the exclusive reserve of TPLF, whether it's the generals. Out of 100 and something generals in the Ethiopian armed forces, over 80% were from Tigray. I mean, how preposterous and ashamed can people be in such a manner? And then you have a small guys like Gebre, who was just a colonel, running Somalia like he's the head of state. And he ran Nairobi, literally, I can tell you this without any fear of contradiction. They also ran a lot of our policies in here. So they terrorized the whole region. That's why I'm saying this has nothing to do with Amara. People want to say that it's Amara region against Tigray region. No, I know what happened, what the TPLF did to Amara region. They took their land, massive land, which was incorporated into Tigray region, dispossessed, what do you call those people, and even the ones who lived in there who are Amaras were like second-class citizens in that region. So I mean, all those things, all those atrocities, and all those injustices were visited upon the Amara. There's no doubt about that. But the issue today is not Amara versus Tigray. The issue is not Abiy versus Tigray. And the issue is not Abiy. It's TPLF and its policies for the last 3 decades, almost close to 3 decades. And everybody in the region is only breathing a bit of a fresh air today.
Okay, sir. How do you think these policies of holding the East Africa hostage has affected the Western's understanding of this conflict?
Well, the TPLF had perfected lobbying in the West. They spent the resources, they sent their people, they worked all these times to make sure that they have the West on their side. And they did that very well. All the human rights violations, all those cross-border activities they used to do, all those massacres they used to carry out, the West was always standing by them. Because the West was also using them to do the dirty job for it in Somalia, in Sudan, in all the countries in the neighboring, in Eritrea, all of those countries. So the West was looking at its own interest. It was looking at its own, basically policies. And the policies of the West is always hegemony and domination and what you call exploitation of the resources and natural resources of all those countries. And in some cases, to also stop from those natural resources from being exploited so that the poverty levels can always increase and we can always be there to ask them for grants. You have to understand that Ethiopia was the biggest recipient of American aid and Western aid. Over $3 billion every year used to flow into the coffers of the TPLF, and nobody used to hold them accountable for anything. So the whole region had been scourged. The whole region had been scorched. So this is the moment now for the region to come back and reclaim its own potential. Have an economic, cooperation and integration between all those countries, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, maybe South Sudan, Djibouti, all those countries. So the prospects for the region to becoming the most difficult, the most deadly region in the continent, to becoming the most powerful and the richest region in the continent. The prospects are massive. The prospects are high. The moment we get rid of TPLF and its own awful, primitive, backward policies in which they were only taking care of themselves and they held the whole country of 110 million, 120 million people hostage, you get them off now, this country, the sky is the limit. Not only for Ethiopia, but for also the countries in the region. We will not be losing our boys and girls across the Mediterranean and everywhere else because there will be more potential. There's going to be more jobs. We can exploit the gas, the oil, all the natural resources that are there in Ethiopia and in Somalia and in Djibouti and in Eritrea. The coastline, the biggest coastline, the blue economy. I mean, without TPLF, the sky is the limit for these countries. But TPLF had to purposely and deliberately maintain the poverty in that place so that they can keep on playing the games they played on them. So I don't trust the West. I don't trust the bulk of the Arab countries, also the so-called Gulf countries who used to assist Meles and assist TPLF. Right now, some of them are going to see the light. I do see Emirates is behaving differently lately, which I think, in my opinion, is in their best interest and in the best interest of the Gulf also, because the peace of the Horn of Africa will affect the Gulf. It will affect the Gulf of Eden. It will affect the Bab el-Mandeb. It will also affect the Gulf states across the Red Sea. So I think the potential for that wider peace is massive, in my opinion. And for countries like my country, I keep telling them, listen, you have the best manpower in trained manpower in the region. You have to think out of the box. And I have a feeling that is going to happen. And I have no doubt in my mind, as soon as TPLF is gotten rid of, it's not going to take the countries in the region, that is Somalia, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, and to get rid of Al-Shabaab within the shortest possible time. So we are seeing the entire region is breathing a fresh air.
Well, there is this perception that Ethiopia is the stabilizer of the Horn of Africa, mainly due to its involvement in peacekeeping missions in the region. And there are also reports that Ethiopia is pulling some of its troops from Somalia. And only in the last 24 hours, we've heard 2 explosions in the Mogadishu town of Somalia. How do you think this would play out in the region, given that Al-Shabaab's power might be revived due to some of the troops of Ethiopia being pulled out of the country? How do you think that will happen, given Somalia's fragile nature and the election?
Let me tell you, I firmly believe that the TPLF and Al-Shabaab have been working together all these years in Somalia and in the region too. And there is sufficient evidence to suggest that. And I will not put it out. You were asking a question?
No, but you said that TPLF refused to work with Al-Shabaab. What do you know about that? Is there any evidence that they work together?
My friend, I have talked to officers. I have talked to officers in the Somali army. Officers in the Somali army who told me that the Ethiopian army used to bury arms and bullets and mortars and all those explosives and the rest of it, all those explosives, everything that Al-Shabaab is getting in that place. Ask yourself the big question: where are they getting it from? Al-Shabaab has no access to the sea. Al-Shabaab is the countries in the neighborhood are Kenya and Ethiopia and Djibouti. And all those countries do not support technically, according to the information we are meant to believe, do not support Al-Shabaab. Where is Al-Shabaab getting all these arms from? Let me tell you one thing. Al-Shabaab and TPLF have been working together. I have been told authoritatively by a very senior Somali officer one time that he himself saw it, how it was easy to get some of those things from the Ethiopian military bases those early days. I don't think this has happened now for a while because a lot of the command structure has changed. So Al-Shabaab, the very reason, the validation of Ethiopian presence, Ethiopian armed forces presence in Somalia was ostensibly to fight Al-Shabaab, but they were not fighting Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a maximum of 3,500 boys who do not have any of these mortars and mechanized units and the rest of them, who can be finished and completely destroyed in the shortest possible time. But I might not be able to discuss some of these things right now here, but it's possible for me to give you a lot of those insights into what kind of things are happening in there. And nobody wants Al-Shabaab out. Ethiopia being the first in that thing. I don't think the West also wanted Al-Shabaab out of Somalia. I don't think my own country, Kenya, wanted Al-Shabaab out of Somalia. I don't think my own country wanted Al-Shabaab out of Somalia. I don't think the countries in the region who have ostensibly sent peacekeeping forces into that country, all of them, so-called armies of African, seriously wanted to stabilize Somalia. No. It is a milking cow, for your information. It's a milking cow. So they don't want to get rid of it. The West is looking at it because of the massive, incalculable mineral resources in that country, whether it is offshore or onshore. And they don't want to exploit this at this time. They want those things to land in their own hands. And we can understand it. We can understand it. So don't be cheated. Not Ethiopia, not Melis, not TPLF ever wanted to get Somalia going and peaceful. No. Because that was the basis for them to keep on entrenching themselves into Somalia, keep on destabilizing it, keep on dividing it and putting it into small different states so that it does not become viable. All this landa, you see, Puntland, Somaliland, Jubaland, that nonsense was created by Meles and his people, by TPLF. The 4.5 was created by them. So it's common knowledge. Everybody knows it. It's an open secret.
Mr. Speaker, what do you think would be the prospect of East African integration, possibly after supposed post-TPLF era in the East Africa?
It's going to be one of the most powerful blocks. Let me tell you, I don't want even to say it's going to be the most powerful economic bloc in Africa. No, it's going to be one of the most powerful economic blocks in the whole world. Let me tell you one thing. Just watch it. Watch it. Watch that 120 million Ethiopians. Watch that powerful, what do you call, pathological, and you could even say genetic disposition of Somalis in terms of trade and business and the rest of it. Watch that knowledge that the Kenyan, what do you call, workforce has right now. We bring all that together, and Eritrea, for your information, with all its strategic location, with the fact that these are also some of the most resilient, hardworking people in the world. I think we will have a country, we will have a region that is going to be like the European Union, a very rich region that doesn't have to fight itself, that has got to develop, and we will develop and compete with the rest of the world. There's no question about it. That Horn of Africa, whatever you want to call it, Afro-Asiatic, Horn of Africa, whatever you want to call it, is going to, once you stop to get TPLF off the map in that place, even between Sudan and South Sudan, there'll be no problem. Even the problem within South Sudan is going to be resolved, and we all know how much effort Dr. Abiy has put into that. I don't think they used to do that before. The whole idea was to keep the conflict going, because that is the tools of trade for them.
Former Deputy Speaker of Kenyan Parliament, Mr. Farah Maalim, it was great having you here on Prime Media. Thank you, sir. This is the end of the program, and thank you for being with us.